that celebrated after the defendant was beaten and cuffed. The video in the car shows the police officers fist bumping.
Today was particularly hard for the family already because it was Susanna's funeral, but to hear that a police officer is now charged in connection with her death makes her even more sadder and angrier.
Dirty cops abuse their powers by exploiting the vulnerable while hiding behind a badge. From illegal activities to murder, their crimes shatter public trust. Now they must face the consequences and answer for their betrayal. And this is just the beginning. Stay tuned as we uncover several jaw-dropping cases where justice is finally served.
But behind the happy facade, Drew was a serial womanizer. He repeatedly left one wife for a younger model, a pattern that led him to murder his third wife, Kathleen, and many believe his fourth wife, Stacy.
After Drew Peterson graduated from high school, he decided to enlist in the Army. During this time, he met his first wife, Carol Brown, and they married. Drew's time in the military came to an end, and he decided to join the Bolingbrook, Illinois Police Department. Drew worked as a patrol officer for several years before being promoted to the narcotics unit. In this role, he became an undercover detective, allowing him to investigate criminal drug-related activities. However, while undercover, Drew's actions led to complications in his personal life. Carol, his first wife, filed for divorce when she discovered that Drew was sleeping with other women during his shifts. In 1982, Drew married his second wife, Victoria Connolly. However, Victoria later revealed that her marriage to Drew was characterized by abuse and control. Drew's behavior became erratic, and he exhibited signs of being mentally unstable. Around the same time, Drew found himself under investigation by his superiors at the Bolingbrook Police Department. The accusations against him centered around his failure to report bribes he had received while undercover. This breach of trust eventually resulted in his being fired from his job. However, Drew was not deterred. He applied for reemployment and was ultimately rehired, albeit at a lower rank. The added stress of the ongoing investigation took a toll on his marriage to Victoria. In 1992, Drew divorced his second wife, Victoria. 2 months after their divorce, he married Kathleen Savio. However, this marriage did not last, and Drew and Kathleen separated in 2001. According to Kathleen's loved ones, she experienced a significant transformation throughout her marriage to Drew. They believed that Drew's controlling personality had a stifling effect on her. As time went on, the relationship between Drew and Kathleen deteriorated significantly. In 2002, Kathleen obtained an order of protection against Drew, alleging domestic violence. 1 year later, the couple officially divorced, and at that time, Drew was already pursuing a relationship with his future fourth wife, Stacy. When Drew met Stacy, she was a teenager working a night shift at a hotel. Drew and Kathleen's relationship remained contentious, as they frequently had to exchange custody of their children. Between 2002 and 2004, there were 18 domestic violence reports filed by Kathleen against Drew. The last weekend in February 2024, Drew had custody of his and Kathleen's children. However, when he went to return them that Sunday, no one was there. On Monday, March 1st, Drew asked Kathleen's neighbors to accompany him into her house to check on her, as no one had heard from her for a few days. When they entered, the neighbors and Drew made a horrifying discovery. Kathleen was found in the dry tub, unconscious, and had a large wound on her head. It was evident that she was dead. Following the initial autopsy, the medical examiner determined that the manner of death was accidental. However, those familiar with Kathleen had suspicions about her ex-husband, Drew. According to Stacy, Drew's fourth wife, Drew was with her at the time of the incident. Stacy stated that they had spent the night together, providing Drew with an alibi for the time of Kathleen's death. Over the years, Stacy and Drew had children of their own. However, in October 2007, Stacy failed to show up for a project that her sister had assigned her. This behavior was uncharacteristic of Stacy, as she was a devoted mother and would never leave her children behind. As a result, her sister filed a missing person report with the police on October 29th. When questioned about Stacy's whereabouts, Drew claimed she had left him for another man. This statement did not sit right with those who knew Stacy. As suspicion fell on Drew for Stacy's disappearance, the detectives decided to delve into his past and investigate the death of his third wife, Kathleen Savio. This investigation ultimately led to the exhumation of Kathleen's body and the determination that she died by homicide. In 2009, Drew was arrested and charged with murdering Kathleen. and his trial began in September 2012. He was found guilty of the crime and was sentenced to 38 years in prison. When the judge announced the sentence, Peterson erupted in anger, screaming, "I did not kill Kathleen." Kathleen Savio's sister shouted back at him, "Yes, you did, you liar." The outburst escalated into a heated exchange, and the judge ordered Stacey Peterson to be removed from the courtroom.
Peterson yelled out in court, "I did not kill Kathleen."
Several years later, in 2016, Drew received another 40-year sentence for attempting to arrange a hit on the life of the state attorney who tried his case. To this day, Drew still maintains his innocence from behind bars. Stacey's whereabouts remain unknown, and Drew remains the prime suspect in her disappearance. The abuse of power by those trusted to uphold the law is reprehensible. While police committing family violence is horrific, it's even worse when an officer preys on vulnerable victims, as seen in the case of Miles Bryant.
This interrogation room interview is dated February 13th, 2023. Searchers found Susanna Morales' remains just days earlier near Highway 316. At one point, investigators tell Bryant they found his gun.
In February of 2023, 23-year-old Doraville police officer Miles Bryant was arrested and charged with multiple offenses in relation to the death of 16-year-old Susanna Morales. Susanna, who had disappeared the previous July, had sent a text message to her mother indicating that she was on her way home. However, she never arrived at her destination, and her remains were later discovered in a wooded area off Georgia Highway 316. Officers conducted a thorough search of the area where Susanna's body was located. During this search, they discovered a loaded Glock pistol. The firearm was registered to Miles Bryant, but he had reported it stolen the day after Susanna disappeared. However, it was later revealed that Miles had asked a detective not to investigate the theft of the firearm. This request raised suspicion among investigators, prompting them to examine the location data from Miles' phone. Analysis of the location data revealed that the phone had been in the wooded area where Susanna's body was located around 1 a.m. the night Susanna went missing. This discovery provided significant evidence linking Miles to Susanna's disappearance and death. The detectives conducted an interview with Miles Bryant, but he claimed he had no idea who Susanna Morales was and had nothing to do with her disappearance. Despite his denials, the evidence suggested otherwise, and Miles was taken into custody. A motion was filed to introduce evidence indicating that Miles Bryant had allegedly kidnapped and killed Susanna Morales to fulfill a sexual urge. The motion also stated that Miles had reportedly used his position as a police officer to go through people's phones he arrested or encountered during his shifts, and then sent that private media, usually sexual photos, to himself. There was also mention of 4 other times when Miles Bryant exhibited deviant behavior. In 2018, a 16-year-old girl named Susanna experienced an unfortunate incident in which her underpants were repeatedly stolen by an individual named Miles Bryant. However, Susanna decided not to file a police report due to the advice of another officer. This officer reassured Susanna that Miles had a promising career in the military, and that involving the police and filing charges could potentially ruin it. Fast forward to 2024, when Miles Bryant found himself on trial for Susanna's murder. The trial resulted in Miles being found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Before receiving his sentence, Miles had the opportunity to address the court and express remorse.
I just want to apologize to everybody and to the victim's family.
During a routine traffic stop, we expect respect and dignity. But in 2015, Officer William Melendez shattered that expectation with his shocking treatment of Floyd Dent.
They're celebrating after the defendant was beaten and cuffed. The video in the car shows the police officers fist bump as a celebratory act of bravery.
William Melendez, an officer with the Detroit Police Department, was known among his co-workers as RoboCop for his aggressive policing tactics. On January 28, 2015, William faced controversy when he assaulted Floyd Dent, an African-American man, during a traffic stop. The incident began when William forcibly removed Dent from his vehicle, leading to a violent altercation. During the encounter, William choked and punched Dent several times, leaving him bloody and requiring medical attention. The police department initially accused Floyd Dent of illegal drug possession and resisting arrest. But months later, when the dashcam footage of the incident was released, the truth came to light. William's actions were found to be excessive and illegal. The release of the video led to Melendez's suspension and, ultimately, to his firing. All charges against Floyd Dent were dropped, as he insisted that Melendez planted narcotics on him during the traffic stop, Evidence supports his claims, and the police department's initial allegations were disproved. In November 2015, Melendez was convicted of assault charges with intent to cause great bodily harm, but was acquitted of strangulation. This conviction barred him from ever again being a police officer or owning a firearm. William's actions had serious consequences for his personal and professional life.
Assault with intent to do great bodily harm less than murder. Complainant Floyd Dent. As to count 3, misconduct in office.
William received a sentence ranging from 13 months to 10 years concerning his assault on Floyd Dent during a traffic stop. In an attempt to mitigate his sentence, William pleaded with the judge, saying he struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, as a result of his time in the military and years as a police officer in high-crime areas, and claimed he had no idea why he assaulted Floyd. As William spoke in court, he appeared calm and collected. Although the judge acknowledged that William was a decorated officer, she said his actions were horrible.
I am truly sorry that you believe my actions were unjust. Please have faith in your law enforcement officers.
Blaming post-traumatic stress or denying that you knew the reason or you can't figure out the reason why you beat this man, I think it bodes very poorly for him.
In around 2017, William was up for parole. Several supporters of William wrote letters to the parole board advocating for his release. One letter in particular was written by a retired Detroit police commander, highlighting William's accomplishments and the character of his career as a law enforcement officer. The parole board also reviewed dozens of awards that William had received throughout his career. After considering the various factors, the parole board ultimately agreed to release William Melendez on January 24, 2017. William Melendez was just the beginning. Next, we uncover Tamika Johnson's shocking fall from officer to convicted murderer. You won't want to miss this.
That CHP officer is behind bars, charged with murdering her husband.
Tamika Johnson, a California Highway Patrol officer, found herself in a tragic situation in February 2009 when she shot and killed her husband, Marcus Lemons, while on a freeway exit ramp. After the shooting, Tamika drove to her parents' home with Marcus's body in the front seat of her car. When questioned by detectives, Tamika provided them with a detailed account of what led to the incident. According to Tamika, she and her husband started their night out at TGI Fridays, but an argument soon erupted. Tamika stated that she took the car keys and started to drive home, attempting to ignore the escalating tensions between her and Marcus. However, Marcus became enraged when she ignored him, grabbing her neck. Tamika claimed she pulled over on the freeway, hoping to calm down and defuse the situation. However, the struggle continued as Marcus took the keys out of the ignition, and a fight over Tamika's purse ensued. Tamika believed that Marcus was going for the gun she carried in her bag, and in self-defense, she managed to get hold of the weapon and shoot Marcus. However, after a thorough investigation, the detectives came to the conclusion that Tamika's story was not one of self-defense. Instead, they suspected it was cold-blooded murder. 2 years after her husband's death, Tamika Johnson was arrested and charged with murder. She pleaded not guilty and was held on a $2 million bail as she awaited trial. Due to her arrest, Tamika was placed on administrative leave without pay from her position as a California Highway Patrol officer. During Tamika's trial, her defense attorneys attempted to present her as a victim of domestic violence, not as someone who committed a callous act of murder. However, the prosecution countered these claims by presenting evidence that Tamika had exhibited aggressive tendencies and a tendency to drink excessively. Additionally, the prosecution painted the victim, Marcus, as a kind and peaceful man. Tamika took the witness stand to testify in her defense, but her statements did little to sway the jury. The jury ultimately found her guilty of first-degree murder, sentencing her to 50 years to life in prison. After the verdict was read, Tamika slid out of her chair behind the defense table and onto the floor. She was handcuffed to a gurney rail by her left wrist and removed from the courtroom as her family wailed and sobbed. Tamika Johnson's actions had nothing on Kenneth Blue, who stole what should have been a joyful time from the mother of his child in the most devastating way.
Blue is charged on 4 counts including first-degree premeditated murder in the strangulation death of Jenny Webb, the Bridgeport woman bearing his unborn child.
In 2012, Jennifer Webb, a 30-year-old administrative assistant from Michigan, made an exciting discovery. She was pregnant. The news filled her with joy and anticipation, especially when the sonogram test revealed that she was going to have a little boy. Jennifer promptly shared her happiness with her mother, calling her in tears to announce her plans to name her unborn son James or Braxton. Despite the joyous news, Jennifer's pregnancy faced one important challenge. The father of the child was not involved, and she had concerns about whether she had shared the news with his wife. Jennifer believed it was crucial for the baby's birth certificate to include the birth father's name, and she felt the man's wife ought to know beforehand. Wanting to address these concerns, Jennifer planned to meet with the baby's father on the evening of August 30th. That night, Jennifer was annoyed by the impending meeting. However, she ultimately decided to go anyway, a decision that would change her life forever. At around midnight, 2 police officers with the Buena Vista Township Police Department, one of them being Kenneth Blue, stumbled upon a gruesome discovery. As they approached the rural dead-end road, they found Jennifer lying on the ground. Upon closer inspection, the officers noticed a peculiar sight. A long cord was attached to the roof rack of Jennifer's car and extended down the ditch to where her body lay. Even more chilling was the fact that the cord was wrapped tightly around her neck. Recognizing the severity of the situation, the detectives wasted no time launching an investigation. They quickly secured the crime scene and began searching for clues that could shed light on what happened to Jennifer. One of the detectives stumbled upon a note written by Jennifer. The note revealed her thoughts on taking her own life. It stated that she had struggled with the idea of being pregnant for several months and had finally admitted to herself that she was not okay with the situation. When the detectives questioned Jennifer's mother, she dropped a bombshell. The father of Jennifer's baby was Kenneth Blue, one of the police officers who found Jennifer's body. This revelation sparked a chain of events that led the detectives to uncover new details about the case. As the investigation continued, the detectives stumbled upon messages between Jennifer and Kenneth Blue on Jennifer's cell phone. These messages provided further insight into their relationship and revealed their intimate connection. Moreover, when they examined Jennifer's call log, the detectives noticed the last person she had contact with was Kenneth. In order to determine the manner of Jennifer's death, a forensic pathologist was called in. The pathologist's findings contradicted the initial assumption that an extension cord strangled Jennifer. Instead, the pathologist determined that Jennifer may have been placed in a chokehold from behind and died as a result of neck compression.
She died of the suffocation. We call it chokehold.
This new information cast doubt on the initial crime scene analysis, indicating that the death may not have been as straightforward as initially thought. During an interview with Kenneth Blue, the detectives noticed several injuries on the officer's body. There were noticeable injuries to his eye, forearm, and index finger. When the DNA results of the paternity of Jennifer's unborn baby confirmed the father was Officer Kenneth Blue, the detectives wasted no time in arresting him and charging him with Jennifer and her unborn son's murder. In 2012, Kenneth Blue went on trial and was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Additionally, he was given an extra 65 to 100-year sentence for the death of his unborn son. During Jennifer's mother's victim impact statement, she had the opportunity to address Kenneth Blue directly. With a mix of anger and sadness, she said,
"Go to your cage and think about how you squeezed the life and breath out of my daughter and grandson, and I hope it haunts you every day for the rest of your life."
Kenneth Blue's case was shocking, but it doesn't end there. Up next is Amber Geiger, a cop whose tragic mistake turned deadly. Stay tuned for this unbelievable story.
I'm an off-duty officer. I thought it was in my apartment, and I shot a guy thinking it was my apartment.
Amber Geiger, a police officer with the Dallas Police Department, lived in a 4-story apartment complex located 2 blocks northwest of her police headquarters in the Cedars district of South Dallas. The floor plans at the complex were identical on every floor, making navigation within the building challenging. On September 6, 2018, Amber Geiger left work after her 13.5-hour shift as a patrol officer around 9:30 p.m. As she was driving home, she engaged in a conversation with her partner. She was armed with her handgun during this time, but her body camera was not turned on. Upon arriving at her apartment complex, Amber failed to notice that she had taken the wrong floor. As Amber attempted to enter what she thought was her apartment, she saw the door was ajar, thinking it was an intruder. Amber drew her weapon and entered the apartment. Once inside, Amber encountered Botham John in his living room, eating ice cream. In a tragic turn of events, Amber shot and killed Botham, striking him twice in the chest. Amber Geiger called 911 to report the shooting.
Get up, man.
Dallas 911, this is Carla. Where's your emergency?
Hi, this is off-duty officer. I need EMS. I'm inside the apartment with him. Hey, come on.
What's your name?
I'm Amber Geiger. I need to get me, I'm in...
Okay, we have help on the way.
I know, but I'm gonna lose my job.
Botham John was rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately, he succumbed to his injuries and died. 3 days later, Amber was arrested and charged with manslaughter. However, the charge was later upgraded to murder following further investigation. In the aftermath of the shooting, Amber was placed on administrative leave by the Dallas Police Department. However, on September 24, 2018, she was fired. The firing resulted from her violation of department policies regarding the use of force and entry without consent.
But there is much more to be done by the city of Dallas.
Amber Geiger's trial began on September 23, 2019. She took the stand in her own defense, recounting the events that led to her shooting of Botham John and testifying that she feared for her life and thought Botham John was an intruder in her apartment. Both the prosecution and defense presented expert witnesses who testified about the use of force, split-second decision-making, and self-defense. After deliberating for about an hour, the jury returned with a guilty verdict against Amber Geiger on October 1, 2019. The following day, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison for her role in Botham's murder. During the sentencing phase of the trial, Botham John's mother, Allison John, provided an emotional testimony, sharing the impact her son's death had on her life and her family. Botham's younger brother, Brant John, also took the stand, expressing his forgiveness for Amber and even hugging her in the courtroom. Although Botham's father did forgive Amber, he wanted her to be stiffer.
Somebody told her that Botham was shot and that he died. My life has not been the same. It's just been like a roller coaster. I cannot sleep. I cannot eat. It's just been the most terrible time for me.
But I love you just like anyone else. I'm not gonna say I hope you rot and die. And I wasn't gonna ever say this in front of my family or anyone, but I don't even want you to go to jail.
Amber Geiger's appeal has been denied, which means that her sentence will stand as decided by the courts. She is still eligible for release as early as September 2024. On the other hand, her full sentence will continue to run until September 2029. The Amber Geiger trial sparked conversations and debates about racial profiling, police brutality, and criminal justice in the United States. Critics argued that Amber's conviction was a rare example of accountability in a system that often favors officers in use of force cases. Supporters of Amber expressed concerns about the potential for vigilantism if officers were discouraged from exercising their right to defend themselves. While some believe Amber Geiger's killing of Botham Jean was accidental, there's no question that Michael Valva's actions were fueled by pure hatred.
The slight boy with hazel eyes who loved school was beaten and starved.
Thomas lived as a prisoner, given a death sentence that was executed. While this defendant will have a cell with a bed and a blanket and a pillow and heat.
In 2022, a Long Island, New York jury convicted a former New York City police officer with the second-degree murder of his 8-year-old autistic son, Thomas Valva. During the trial, it was revealed that the principal and teachers of Thomas Elementary School, where Thomas attended 3rd grade, had made over 24 calls to Child Protective Services in the 3 years before the child's death. Testimony during the trial revealed that Thomas's teachers had repeatedly raised concerns about his physical well-being. They testified that on several occasions, Thomas and his brothers arrived at school covered in bruises. The extent of the injuries raised concerns among staff members, who suspected that the children were being abused. Furthermore, several school staff members described instances where they witnessed Thomas eating crumbs off the floor and out of the trash. Additionally, it came to light that Thomas wore pull-ups all day, despite being 8 years old, which was made due to his incontinence, believed to be caused by the stress of not using the bathroom for long periods while at home. According to the prosecution, Michael Valva abused his son for several years before January 17, 2020, when Thomas ultimately went into cardiac arrest and died due to hypothermia. On the night of January 17th, Thomas and his brother, also autistic, were locked in the garage at their Long Island home. The garage lacked proper insulation and was unheated, making it extremely cold. At around 8 a.m., Thomas, confined to the freezing garage, soiled himself. Based on security camera footage and audio records, Michael Valva can be heard telling his fiancée, Angela Polina, to make the 8-year-old boy eat his feces. Michael Valva verbally berated Thomas, cursing him for soiling his pants before school. He ordered Thomas to strip down so he could hose him off in the yard before school with cold water. One of the Valva family's neighbors' security camera footage caught Thomas losing his balance and falling, hitting his head as he walked down an icy path after Michael hosed him off in the yard. Minutes after the fall, at around 8:50 a.m., Michael Valva took his son back to the garage. The recordings revealed alarming statements by Michael to his fiancée. He can be heard stating that Thomas was catatonic and needed help. Michael then proceeded to slap his son repeatedly, yelling, "Wake up! Are you alive?" The security cameras captured these actions. Despite witnessing his son's condition, Michael did not seek immediate medical attention. Instead, he tried to wake Thomas, who was unresponsive. After failing to revive his son through a warm bath, Michael Valva finally made the call at 9:40 a.m. to report Thomas's condition. The ambulance arrived promptly and transported Thomas to the hospital. However, Thomas's condition continued to deteriorate, and upon his arrival, his temperature was only 76.1 degrees. Tragically, less than 1 hour later, Thomas passed away. The medical reports revealed severe hypothermia, which experts believe was caused by prolonged exposure to cold temperatures. Michael Valva's actions were deemed reprehensible, and he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison.
I just can't deny I did not want my son to die.
Come here today and see an end to it.
We wanted to make sure that this man got the absolute biggest sentence he could under the law.
During Michael Valva's trial, the prosecution showed extensive surveillance footage from inside the home, and the prosecutors asserted Thomas and his brother had been abused for years. The Suffolk County District Attorney who tried the case referred to it as heartbreaking and one of the toughest cases he has experienced in his 30 years as a prosecutor. Several staff members from Thomas's elementary school testified to the conditions they witnessed Thomas come to school in. We've seen how dirty cops react to unspeakable sentences, but the story doesn't end here. In our next video, we uncover even more shocking cases where justice delivers unexpected twists. You won't want to miss what happens next.